been doing a lot of videos on social commentary lately, so I figured this Monday might as well come back with some motivation, right? And this one it's a little personal to me, only because I kind of feel like I fit in this demographic to an extent. So the premise is, a lot of us, especially a lot of us guys, we're living quiet lives of desperation, right? So what do I mean by that? Now, you might have heard this quote before, might have heard it in like a Joe Rogan podcast. Side note, I don't know who's watching Joe Rogan podcasts anymore, but that's besides the point. But you know, that quote holds a lot of water, because for a lot of us out here, we're living lives doing shit that we don't want to do, right? And I'll give you all the best example. The best example I know, which is me. So, you know, with a lot of the work that I do, sometimes you'll be in between pay, depending on the project, right? So in my industry, sometimes you get paid on something called a net 30 or a net 60. That's not always the case, but usually if you're working with a bigger brand, like for example, I did a photo shoot for 7-Up, and not 7-Up, excuse me, for Mountain Dew. I said 7-Up, showing my age there. But I did a shoot for Mountain Dew, and when I did that shot for Mountain Dew, they paid me at a net 30. So it was a good amount of money, but I had to wait 30 days to get it. So it's very different from corporate. Now, sometimes you'll get hit with the combo, whereas you may not be getting a lot of work, and then at the same time, you also have to wait for your pay, which is, in some regards, where I found myself, right? Side note, I'm being transparent with y'all, right? I'm being an open book here. So I didn't book anything for like 2.5 months. And throughout all of that, you know, you start to have doubts, you start to second guess yourself, and you know, you start to wonder what the fuck is going on, especially if it's your career, right? Now, for me, one thing I noticed about myself was that we all, well, myself, but we all have a tendency to kind of jump ship when things seem like they're going wrong, right? When things seem like they're, you know, it's not going to get better or things aren't going to improve, we start to look for different exits. And I'm not going to lie, to some extent, I found myself doing that as well. You know, so coming from a tech background, I used to work in tech sales. You know, I went through the job postings, which, as a side note, the job market these days are absolute trash anyway. So, man, if you have literally no way of making income outside of a job and you're looking for a job because you don't have one, my heart goes out to you, minus the Roman salute. But no, on a real note, my heart absolutely goes out to you, because it's tough out here for sure. But here's really what I'm trying to get at, though. You know, sometimes in life things aren't going to go the way you expect them to, and you know, that can be in regards to the things that you actually want to achieve, or it can be in regards to the things that you don't even want to fucking do. You just find yourself doing it because the thing you want to do isn't available to you at that moment. But more than likely, you're gonna come across these moments in your life during your journey where, you know, if you're avidly trying to achieve something, you're gonna come into, you know, obstacles. You're gonna face them. And I think it's important for a lot of us, especially us men, you know, this applies to everyone, but I think for a lot of us guys, it's important for us to have that kind of abstract ideation. You know, like the premise that maybe we don't know everything that's happening on the other side of the things that we're working towards. Because I feel like when we're missing that kind of thought process, I should say, when we're missing that sort of thought process, it sets us up for failure. Because I realize this within myself as I'm going through the job postings. I'm like, wait, shit ain't really bad for me. But I think for a lot of us, when we don't see things going the way we want it to go, that's when we start formulating those different opinions and we start thinking about different strategies. Like, why quit if you're so close to the thing that you want, simply because you're stuck on a certain process, or, you know, something outside from like your external, outside of your control, needs some input from something that's outside of your control, and therefore you have to wait. These are all just thoughts in abstract as I contemplate my own journey through life, because I think it's important for us to sit back and reflect sometimes. You know, take the time to actually think about, what am I doing? How far have I gotten doing this? You know, is there Is there an exit strategy? You know, things of that nature. You know, because there's nothing worse than living a life that you regret. And again, I feel like that's something that doesn't get talked about enough. You know, like people, especially when you're growing up, like if you're a millennial like me, you know, growing up, people would always tell you like, oh, you know, just do good in school, pay attention, get good grades, etc., etc. But how come no one ever talks about, you know, the feeling you get in your gut when you're on like year 15 of a life you don't really want to live, and now you've got a family and kids and you're in too deep? How come no one talks about that regret someone might feel? I'm not saying it's wrong, right? But at the same time, I feel like society's done such a bang up job trying to push people to live a life that they don't really want to live. To an extent, all of us have this degree of regret for the life that we're living. I mean, not all of us, you know. I like to think I don't have those kind of regrets. Sometimes I do. Like, y'all ever have those moments where you're just like minding your business and then you think back to a time when you were like 15 or some shit and then you feel like the cringe just fucking pour out of you? Those are the only moments of regret I have. But you know, I feel like I've made it a point in my life to really do the things that I wanted to do. And that's not from a perspective of being immature. You know, I mean, I just mean that sincerely. Like, what is the point of living a life you don't want to live? Like, what do you get out of that? Aside from, you know, the accoutrement you get from being a human being in a functioning society. Well, the things you're supposed to get. I think that's the worst part when I think about it. So many of us work these jobs that they're useless. You know, like, I'm not gonna lie, y'all. When I worked in tech sales, there are certain services that I would make these sales calls for, and these products are useless. Like, okay, you built the business, you got funding, all right. My neighbor's dog is out here just barking, so I'm gonna go ahead and wrap this up. But, you know, some products are just useless, and people work for these companies. Again, that's not bad. Everyone's gotta make money, but, you know, for the most part, a lot of the shit that we're buying is pointless. Like, we don't really need it, right? So the things that we're doing in life, the impact that we think we're making, we're not really making whatsoever. So I'm gonna say this in closing because my neighbor's dog is really fucking annoying. In short, live a life that you really want to live, you know, and if that means you have to detach yourself from something, from someone, you have to start all over again, then do that. But personally speaking, I feel like you'd be doing yourself a disservice if you then spent the next, you know, half of your life, quarter of your life, doing something you don't really want to do. Why do you think so many people have like quarter life crises or midlife crises? If anything, the life crises are a more common occurrence for younger folk these days. You know what I mean? So many of y'all are like in your mid-20s. I just kicked the camera. Oh, I just kicked it again. Sorry. So many of y'all are in like your mid-20s, you know, early 30s crashing out because you don't like the lives that you live. And I don't blame you. Shit, I'm right there with you, dog. You know, so I don't know. Just wanted to say all that. Wanted to make something quick. Listen, the year's almost over. 2025 is almost up. The clock's ticking. You know, the clock is ticking. I don't know what you want to achieve in life, but you have to figure out what you really want because there's not a lot of time left. Anyway, let me know your grievances in the comments. Let me know what you think. Thank you so much for stopping by. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. We're on the road to 10K. I want you to be a part of this community. And that's about it. I'll see y'all Wednesday and Friday. Definitely. I know I've been saying that the last 2 weeks, but I promise Wednesday and Friday, I got y'all. Peace.